auditors at uh, Coventry City Council, helping with the energy audit with the local SME businesses and delivering the decarbonization net zero program. So we are in the day 4 of our decarbonization net zero webinar week. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today, focusing towards the carbon accounting. And I have with me a fantastic speaker, David from Auditel, who will be leading and explaining all thing and everything about carbon accounting today. So, and also I have my colleagues Maria, Claire, and John on the chat function, to help you with any queries. So we'll look after to any of your queries from the chat function. So please carry on with your queries. Next slide, please, Maria. So yeah, a bit of a very quick housekeeping. I would just request a humble request to everybody to turn off their video while we are having the speaker leading the session. Also, to reduce any background noise, if you can please put yourself all on mute. I could see you're still on unmuted version, so if you can mute yourself, that would be really useful. The slides will be sent to everybody after the session, and this webinar is recorded, so the recording will also be available. As I said, if you have any queries along the time we are having the presentation, put your questions in the chat and we'll pick it up. And if you have any question, you can always put forward in the Q&A session at the very end. And most importantly, last not the least, your feedback is very important. So we will be looking forward to have a feedback from you to improvise for the next section and next sessions and having new ideas. So introduction to the carbon accounting. Here we go. I would welcome David Wilson from Auditel to please lead the session and take on the stage. Yeah, David, all for you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you very much. And just before we get started, 2 apologies. I'm a bit full of cold today, so apologies if I sound a bit bunged up. Hopefully that won't detract from this. And that means I'm at home today as well, rather than infecting people in the office. So my dog is at my feet. If you hear dog barking, that's my dog. Anyway, so next slide, please. Okay, so just a brief intro before we get into the accounting side of things. What are we actually talking about here today? So carbon accounting, climate action is really the UN sustainability goal. These are the 17 sustainability goals, and number 13 is climate action. Carbon accounting does affect others as well in these categories, but when you're looking at the pure accounting side of things, we're really looking at measuring carbon emissions and, more importantly, what we can do about reducing them. So we're kind of laser focused for this session on number 13, climate action. Next, please. So just a brief intro. Apologies for those of you that are very educated in the world of carbon, but it's just really to give you a flavour of the language that is used within this industry. So carbon neutral. Carbon neutral is a phrase often used and interchanged with things like net zero, but carbon neutral is a short-term objective. Carbon neutral, any business, any organisation, they can measure their carbon footprint and then they can buy carbon credits to offset it and call themselves carbon neutral. So, that's not a bad thing, but that's not really what carbon accounting is focused on. We're really looking at the long term. We're looking at net zero objectives. So the difference with net zero is once you've established ways that you can reduce it, you are looking at things you can do within your business that can actually influence your footprint and lower it. So you can't achieve net zero by offsetting. You can't just buy carbon offsets. You've got to look inside your business to see how you can achieve carbon reduction. So that's one clear distinction. And the other distinction, just today, we're really talking about organizational carbon. So that means the carbon within your business. When you open the doors in the morning, whatever you do, whether you go to your room and you're a one-man band or one-woman band, or whether you go into an office or whether you go into a factory, it's that carbon during that day. It's the energy used to deliver what you deliver. That's organizational carbon, and that's what this session's about. There is also embodied carbon for those of you that make things, that manufacture things. That's a really, really important topic, and we won't go into that today because it's far more complex. And but that's sort of the distinction. One is organization that we're looking at. The other is, if you are making something, those materials you buy in to make that product, what's the carbon in the metal, in the plastic, in the aluminium, whatever it is you buy in to do what you do. So organizational carbon. Let's have a little think about net zero and what we're actually talking about here, because there are a number of approaches. Generally accepted is, as the standard is, the Paris Agreement, where we're looking to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees in addition to that industrial period measure, and we're looking to achieve that by 2050. Now, that's not all down to you. That's not all down to business to do that. In this graph, blue, think of blue as what you can do as a business, and think of green as what is happening out there in wider technological advancements to capture carbon. So the combination of business activity to reduce carbon in their operations and the technology that is being developed to capture carbon, there's direct air capture factories being set up where they can actually literally suck the carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in a solid form underground. So that kind of technology works hand in hand with what your business is looking to do. So this objective to get to 90% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 is a combination of the two factors, technology advancements and what you as a business could do. Next, please. Okay, so what are we talking about when we talk about carbon? Well, there are actually, if you could press again, there are 7 key gases that are causing global warming in our atmosphere. Okay, we will talk about carbon, but you've got methane. Methane's in fertilizer. You've got nitrous oxide, which is kind of a sedative, laughing gas, but also used in fertilizer and other things. And then these kind of fluorocarbons, these 4 that are associated with things like air conditioning and heating and that kind of thing. So we talk about carbon because it's the lowest common denominator. If you look at nitrous oxide on this chart, if you did use nitrous oxide in your business, then actually per ton, that is 265 times more damaging or more effective in terms of global warming than a ton of CO2. And you can see some quite scary multiples at the far end there with the fluorocarbons. So when we talk about carbon accounting, yes, we equate everything to a CO2 measure, but we are also looking at these other 6 gases, if relevant within your business. They won't all be relevant to all businesses, but just so you're aware, it's not there are other gases that are in the greenhouse gas protocol that we need to consider. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but what we find with a lot of businesses that are either starting on their journey or they've started the journey, they're not sure where to go next, is there's a lot of forces that are kind of relevant for them in terms of their clients or their customers very often are asking for carbon footprints, carbon reduction plans. And that's quite scary when your key customers sort of come to you and ask for that, and you know, where do I start? Your competition, if you're not doing it, you can be pretty sure that someone in your competitive sphere is working on their carbon strategy. And it's clear from the companies we work with that again, a lot of clients are putting a lot of weight in their tenders on the net zero or carbon strategy that your business has in place. So you need to think about that. There's also legislation, not as much as they have in Europe. In Europe, if we were still in Europe, wow, you would have a lot of legislative pressure to get into your carbon accounting schedule. But we don't have that yet in the UK, unless you're going for big government tenders where you have to have a carbon reduction plan as part of your submission. But it will be coming. There's legislation in discussion, I think, without getting too political, I think, in my view, Labour are kind of shining a light on carbon a little more than the Tories did in their last sort of year or so in power. So it's coming, but we really more from your clients. And also, if you want to do the right thing as well, it's not a bad thing to approach. But there's a lot of challenges, and you can see some of those on the right-hand side. And what we find is a lot of businesses kind of go into paralysis. It's like, where do I start? What do I do? How do I get started? So that's what today's about. How do you get started? So looking at the next slide, here's an idea of how to get started. So there are a myriad of standards and disclosure frameworks. And again, a lot of the people we talk to, a lot of businesses say, well, which one do I align with? Where do I start? Do I go with Science Based Targets Initiative? Should I be a B Corp business? I've heard of EcoVadis, they do really good things for sustainability. So there's a myriad of them out there. And depending on the sector you work in, different sectors are kind of aligning with different things. And then there are also below this another layer of sector or association standards to try and help you navigate this carbon agenda and do this accounting piece. For us, this is the auditor and my personal view. There are just too many. And what we tend to do as an approach is we look at what's on the left-hand side, which is about really the family of ISO 14001, which is all about environmental standards. So within that framework, within 14001, which is your environmental standards, there are things like 14064. 14064 is about how to do carbon accounting, how to assess your greenhouse gas emissions, how to articulate and report them, and how to go about reducing them. So that's a really good structure. And instead of having to spend, potentially thousands or in some cases tens of thousands of pounds with some of these other organizations, you can start your journey with an ISO standard, which you can purchase from BSI or a number of websites for sort of 100 or certainly less than £200. It's an international standard by definition. So that's where we tend to align our work, is with the ISOs. And for any business of any size, it will give you an absolutely fantastic framework to get started. So that's kind of our thinking on that one. Think about PAS standard, which is a standard for carbon neutrality. Think about the ISO 14001 family of standards. You don't necessarily, with the carbon ones, need to go through a formal audit process, but it gives you the framework to do the work in the order that you should be doing it, and measuring what you should be measuring. So I'd strongly recommend anyone, look at that kind of 14068, 14064, check those ISOs out and see what you think of those. Next, please. Right, we try and break this down then, carbon accounting, to three areas, and this 3 model underlines all of those sort of standards I just looked at. So step 1 is your measurement. It's your carbon footprint measurement. You can't manage what you can't measure, as everyone says, and it's true. You need to understand where your hotspots are and where there's opportunity to reduce your carbon in your business. Once you've done that, you need to set your targets, and these need to be not woolly targets. They need to be science-based targets. You need to be saying, okay, here's the 3 top things I could do, identified in my carbon footprint to reduce my carbon footprint, and I've looked into it. This is what potentially could cost. This is what it could potentially save me, perhaps in energy. So if it was a solar project, or moving your fleet to electric, or whatever it may be, or even just for a one-man band, it might be buying a green energy tariff. So the targets are key, but you need to quantify them. You need to scientifically identify and cost what they're going to cost to do and how much carbon they're going to save you. Once you've got those targets and you've worked them into a timeline, you then get into the reduction actions, and that's the doing. And this is a circle of life. once you've done the doing, in a year's time, you measure again, you measure your footprint again, and you review your targets. Have you achieved what you set out to achieve in that 12 months? What are your targets over the next 12 months? And you kind of repeat the process. Next, please. Many of you will see this. This is kind of the classic greenhouse gas protocol scopes that you should be looking at when you are measuring your carbon footprint. I'm not going to go through all of these, but for a business that's starting out, you probably want to look at scopes 1 and 2. So you can really quickly measure your carbon from your electricity, gas, and fuel you burn in your company vehicles, just from your invoices and your bills. It's an easy start, and I can point you into the direction of software or people that can help you with that. And it's the place to start. Where the real challenge comes is in scope 3. And if we go to the next slide, with scope 3, for most businesses, this is the driver for carbon activity. So you're a supermarket, you buy loads of goods in, you've got all sizes of vendors. All of those vendors and the transportation of all those products to your supermarket sit in scope 3. Imagine how many thousands of businesses that can be. Now, obviously, for smaller businesses, there'll be less suppliers, but generally, across multiple sectors, the majority of any business's carbon footprint sits in that scope 3 because of the sheer quantity of goods movements or service movements that need to be calculated. And that is why the big the big business is saying to the smaller businesses or their strategic suppliers, what are you doing about your carbon footprint? How are you reducing it? Because you're in my scope 3 and I need to work on that now. So this is where the pressure comes from. Next, please. This is a busy one, but let me just try and, this is how we kind of articulate the model and how businesses mature in terms of their carbon work. So kind of at beginning level, that's that sort of grey one at the bottom there, that little semicircle. And this is where you start considering things. You put a team together, or it might just be you, but you start thinking about, where do I burn energy? Where can I start measuring that? Maybe I can switch to a renewable energy tariff. Is there something I can do? You can then get into a more, in year 2, a bit of more of an advanced model. You can start properly measuring your footprint. You can start engaging with your suppliers. Start thinking about it, not just from a, I've got to measure my carbon point of view, but, what can I do in terms of procurement process or strategy to reduce my carbon? Are there other areas I can look at? Can I start engaging with suppliers? And as you go through your years of, if you remember that repeat cycle, 1, 2, 3, measure, then set your targets, then reduce, then measure again. So these are the years that you travel through, and your business can, within 4 or 5 years, become an advanced carbon model, have an advanced carbon model. So it's kind of embedded in all departments within the business. HR are thinking about how people move. Are they using trains when they can use trains? You're thinking about your buying decisions. Does my delivery company, what's their carbon approach? Are they running electric vans? Do they invest in carbon credits? So it's becoming embedded in your business as a kind of thought process as you think about your various business divisions. Next slide, please. Okay, quick run through. Many of you may have done this already, year 1, so apologies if you have, but the idea is to give you a place to start. So what's it look like? Next slide, please. So Carbon Workshop is where we think it's a good place to start. So it depends on the size of your business. If we've done this with businesses with 10, 12 people, we've done it with businesses with hundreds of people. But getting people in a room and having a facilitated conversation about carbon and carbon strategy is a great place to start. You might be having a conversation with yourself if you're self-employed, but just taking that time out to have that sort of discussion and a discussion purely around carbon is a great place to start. Next, please. Out of that discussion, what we tend to put together is a carbon inventory. So this is a graphic and a list of the different emission sources categorized into scopes 1, 2, and 3, which was that complicated factory graph that was going on there. And it identifies the ones that are relevant to your business, and it identifies the documents or the survey or the work you need to do to understand what the carbon is for each of those scopes. So it's kind of your blueprint, and it's as long as it needs to be or as short as it needs to be, depending on the complexity in your business. You may need to look at capital good purchases. You may need to look at multiple suppliers. We have some suppliers, some businesses with, hundreds of suppliers. We have other businesses with a handful of suppliers. The principles are still the same. So, if you follow that carbon accounting approach, the ISO approach that we talked about earlier, then you'll get to the same output. So take that plan. You then go away and capture your data. And if we can go to the next slide, please. You get the carbon footprint report, and this is that stage 1 complete. We've done the measuring. You've got a carbon footprint report, and it's something that you can publish. You can share with your clients. Don't be scared to do it. As long as you have followed the principles of carbon accounting and followed the ISO directional standards, or you might feel more comfortable working, either doing the work and asking a consultant to check your homework, or you might want to get a consultant to do it, or you might want to do it yourself. But the ISO and the PAS standards will help you do that. So that's your carbon footprint report. Out of that, then, next slide, please. You can start thinking about, and another one, please, sorry. Another slide, please. Thanks. So once you've done the report, another workshop, another sit down, look at the results, look at the different scopes that you've been measuring. What have the numbers come out at? Have any surprised you? I had one client who thought, well, my employees live within a few miles, my employee commuting will be really low, but actually that wasn't the case. It was kind of approaching 15% of their carbon footprint. So, they start thinking about, well, is there a way we can get staff in to work a bit more efficiently? Can we run a car scheme for our employees where they get a really good tax break and we encourage them into electric cars at a really good price? Can we run a bus for, local people to sort of literally pick them up and drop them off? So, there's lots you can think about, and that carbon reduction workshop is kind of your next step. That's how you start thinking about, right, what can I do? Let me start thinking about what I can do. Let me start thinking about what that looks like in terms of science-based targets. What activity can I do that's measurable to reduce my footprint? And what does that look like over time? So that's kind of working on now your stage 2 and 3. You're thinking about, let me quantify it, let me measure it. How can I reduce my carbon? Implementing, absolutely key, obviously. And then, next slide, please. You can start working into this carbon reduction plan. So this is just an example of one. This company have a small car fleet. So, this is one of the actions they identified. Okay, we've got loads of diesel petrol vehicles. Actually, I haven't got loads. I think it's like 16 or 17. But, what does it look like if half of those move to hybrid vehicles? Because we can't send them all electric because we haven't got the, charging capacity, or, people haven't got chargers at home and that kind of thing. So we could save 6.6 tons of carbon. Okay. If we move to all hybrids, so again, sort of like a petrol and an electric motor working together, actually we could double that. It's going to be 13 tons. And actually that's not a bad place to be, because we can't go all electric, but we've done the maths. If we did go all electric, we save 14.9 tons of CO2. So 13.2 isn't bad, and it sort of fits with our business model as well. So those are the kind of considerations you have when you get into carbon reduction planning. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, and this is just kind of helping you plot things as you move along. So you will set your science-based targets, and that is nothing more complicated than working out what you can do. You might need to engage with some procurement specialists to sort of understand the cost, the return on investment, and when it could be delivered, and then you can put it into a plan over the years. So this isn't a very good uh, uh, graphic of the thing, but if you look at that computer screen, this is going from your baseline year. So right at the left-hand side where the graph is at its highest, that's your carbon in your baseline year. And then it runs all the way to 2050 at the other end, where you get down to this sort of level of within 10% tolerance of net zero. And along this pathway will be various actions in various years that you think are realistic because you've looked at your carbon reduction plan. You think, yeah, I can do that next year, or I can do that in 2 years' time. And these are plotted into your science-based targets. So as long as they are based on science, it's not just you saying, oh, I think that's going to be roughly 20 tons of CO2 I can save. If you have done the maths properly, as per that previous slide, where you're looking at different sort of fleet solutions, then, you know, again, this is science-based targets. It is nothing more complex than that. I'm sure you get much more, you know, bells and whistles with signing up to an association like SBTi or someone like that, but that's what it is, science-based target setting. Next, please. Yeah, and honestly, do not be scared to, you know, declare what you've done. If you follow that kind of process, and I apologize for the whistle stop tour, but, you know, 15, 20 minutes, I've tried to squeeze a lot in. I'll give you an example. I've got a client going to see on Monday, and they've been through this process. They've I think they've got 16 employees. They're kind of a warehousing type of business, and they've done all of this. And on Monday, the independent verification body who kind of marked all our homework and approved the carbon reduction plan, the science-based targets, etc. They're a global verification body, and they're going to the client on Monday to do a film walk around, to interview the managing director, and it's going to be, you know, on their website. And so, you know, that's great because, I mean, you know, they committed to a serious piece of work. They spent a lot of time on it, but they're getting a recognition for it. And because they've achieved the PAS 2060 carbon neutral standard, approved by UCAS, it's something they can really brag about, and it's something they can really talk to their clients about. So, you know, there's commercial win out there as well. I'm not naive enough to think that everyone wants to do this because they're a bit like me in a sort of tree hugger in a suit. But yeah, there's great opportunity commercially as well as and to market your achievements. Next, oh gosh, yeah, not going through all of that, but I think what essentially to take away from this one is, you know, relating back to that beginner, emerging, established, marketing leader type of journey. You know, there's lots and lots of steps on the way, but you know, start now. Don't feel that your desire for perfection will stop you getting started, because I can absolutely promise you I have not got one client that I've worked with who got everything right first time round. You know, there's a lot of data gaps, but that's what it's about. It's about finding those gaps as well as finding the emission areas. It's finding those data gaps and kind of putting that data improvement plan in so that next year, you know, you get a better data set, and you can be more accurate, and then you can make your planning more accurate. And so it's the pathway, it's the journey. But yeah, I just encourage you all to get started, you know, whether that's yeah, measuring your electricity and gas bills, or whether you've kind of done all of that, you now want to start thinking about, well, how do I actually reduce carbon in my business? You know, wherever you are on the journey, yeah, carry on, because it's all of us doing it all together that's going to make the difference. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for an excellent session, providing a brilliant guidance, towards helping businesses, how they can develop a carbon reduction plan and carbon accounting itself, So yeah, I don't see many questions in the chat function. If anybody is still thinking of any good question for David, please pop it into the chat function and I'll pick up. There is one question from Uma about the directory, the business directory, as they are a local business in Coventry, which Maria and myself and the team will pick up, and they can email it Uma about the link, how to join, and the guidance itself. Umar, if it's okay. But if you're still thinking of any more questions, then please pop it into the chat function or raise your hand and we'll pick up from there. If we can have a next slide, please. Yeah, I can see John with a hand up. Yes, please, John.
Yeah, thank you. I had a quick question, David, if that was okay. First of all, brilliant presentation. Thanks for sharing that with us. I had a quick question on the measurables behind the carbon on scope 3, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So say I'm a business looking to reduce their scope 3. So I'm going to my supply chain to get them to reduce their emissions, basically. Is there not a danger that those reductions might be double counted, as in the supplier is counting the reduction and then I'm counting it as part of my scope 3 reduction, if that question follows?
Yeah, no, that question does follow. So it'll depend what they're doing, but let's say your supplier's a logistics business, and you get goods and services delivered to you through the logistics business. Change, and that would appear in the relevant company's scope 1. So your supplier's scope 1, if they, for example, I don't know, move from diesel to hydro treated vegetable oil, for example, that would be a significant reduction in their fuel scope 1. But yes, it would also impact on your scope 3. You're absolutely right. So yeah, double accounting. There is always, in my view, there's always a bit of a grey area on that one.
Yeah.
You've got to draw a boundary, but and that's why I don't always think of carbon accounting as financial accounting. The numbers don't have to be exactly right. I'll probably get blown down. I'll be shot down for saying that. But the reason you're doing it, and in that example, you've had a really positive impact on reducing carbon emissions. It's dropped in your scope 3 and it's dropped in your supplier's scope 1. Kind of everyone's happy, but the numbers, if you were adding up, how many CO2 savings it is, it does get a little bit.
But if there was an overall body adding it all up as a massive sort of total, then it would be an issue. But in this case, it doesn't matter too much.
If we had a global carbon body that was kind of counting it for each business, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? Then there'd be challenges, and we'd have to work out a way of we'd have to have a rule around it. But
got it. Good answer.
Is that all right?
Perfect. Lovely. Cheers.
Thank you, John. Thank you, David. If I have the next slide, please, Maria. Right. Okay. So as David said, measure, target, and reduce. That's the key point in carbon reduction plan. How Coventry City Council, through the decarbonisation net zero program, is helping businesses, to actually achieve that very first step towards, measuring and reducing the carbon emissions, or leading to a carbon saving. So we are providing decarbonisation net zero funding. A program which has been part of a wider West Midlands business support group, funded and called as UK's Shared Prosperity Fund. And more details on the next slide, please, Maria. So yeah, we are here providing a funding grant of ranging from £1,000 to £100,000 with an intervention rate of 50%, and we are inviting SMEs within the region, to please come and apply for this opportunity, because through the opportunity, I think that will be the first step itself, towards your carbon reduction planning. And the grant is available to eligible businesses, focusing SMEs, sole traders, manufacturing companies, as you can see on the slide, Birmingham, Solihull, Coventry, Black Country and Warwick region. So we focused around Coventry and the Warwick region. So please come on and apply for the funding program. Next slide, please, Maria. Okay, so how does the funding program works? So you will register yourself on the link which is on the slide itself, as well as it can be found on the website, more details. So once you register yourself, there will be a small questionnaire which could be filled in, providing most of the information around background of your company, assessing your eligibility, which is a very quick one, more than doesn't take more than 5 to 6 minutes of your time. And once we have that information, myself as an energy advisor, John on the call, and some of our team, brilliant teammates, other energy advisors, they will come and visit you on the site. Obviously, we will be needing your last 12 months bills, focusing again on your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, direct and indirect, as we say, specifically the consumption of your energy in terms of electricity, gas, or any kind of a fuel you are using on site. So we'll be doing the audit on site, and we'll be writing a report with recommendations around savings, both kilowatt hour savings, consumption saving, as well as the cost savings and the carbon tons savings annually you can achieve. With those recommendations, you can then prioritize which grant application, what you would like to apply towards the grant application. And as I say, up to £100,000 of grant is available to eligible organization with a 50% intervention rate. Next slide, please, Maria. So yeah, please get onto that link, sign up for the free energy audit. The audits are totally free of cost, and it gives you a good baseline information to get on with excellent funding support. Obviously, we have a Green Business Network with more than 3,000 business community members already signed up on the link. We have a free newsletter with great case studies, information being shared across the community. So you can find supplier support, for implementing some of those recommendations out from the report. So please join in our Green Business Network. Next slide, please, Maria. Yeah, and we have a great community of other resources available to guide you make those decisions where you want to prioritize your decarbonization journey. So we have podcasts available every month, leading to different kind of a guidance, sort of carbon accounting, solar, heat pumps, heating, lighting, etc. So do come up and join our excellent community. But first thing first, do apply for the grant before it goes off. It's available until March 2025 next year. So yeah, I'm more than happy to sign up as soon as possible. There are also other resources available, as you can see, through the Green Business Directory. There are over more than 100 companies available with different categories, as you can see, where the support is available in terms of implementing your recommendation, making those upgrades and retrofit changes at your site to apply for the funding, and a lot of support. So yeah, more than happy for you to join in. Yeah, I think we're done with it. Yeah, so that's the details. Please, if you have any queries, you can email us at decarb@eston.ac.uk, or you can reach to these links available to apply for the relevant support you need. Plenty of support available. Yeah. And last not the least, I guess we have one more slide where we are welcoming most of the business communities available in the region to come and join the West Midlands Net Zero Business Conference happening on the 10th of October at the MTC Coventry. So please come in and join in. There will be fantastic information, knowledge sharing sessions available, speaker opportunities, as well as, there will be our team available, to help you, guide you through lots of grant support towards net zero and decarbonization. So please do come and join us on the conference event itself. So yeah, I think we are ending the session today, and thank you very much. And I'm really sorry, we're just 9 minutes over passing our limit, but it's been excellent, having David on board and all the team members here. Thank you very